Nikita Khrushchev's secret speech against Stalin. Comrades! In the report of the Central Committee of the Party at 20th Congress, and a number of speeches by delegates to the Congress, as also formally during the plenary, the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union sessions, quite a lot has been said about the cult of the individual and about its harmful consequences. After Stalin's death, the Central Committee of the party began to implement a policy of explaining concisely and consistently that it is impermissible and foreign to the spirit of Marxism-Leninism to elevate one person, to transform him into a superman possessing supernatural characteristics akin to those of a god. Such a man supposedly knows everything, sees everything, thinks for everyone, can do anything, is infallible in his behavior. Such a belief about a man, and specifically about Stalin, was cultivated among us for many years. At the present, we are concerned with the question, which has immense importance for the party now and for the future. We are concerned with how the cult of the person of Stalin has been gradually growing, the cult which became at a certain specific stage the source of a whole series of exceedingly serious and grave perversions of party principles, of party democracy, of revolutionary legality. Because of the fact that not all as yet realize fully the practical consequences resulting from the cult of the individual, the great harm caused by the violation of the principle of collective direction of the party, and because of the accumulation of immense and limitless power in the hands of one person, the Central Committee of the party considers it absolutely necessary to make the material pertaining to this matter available to the 20th Congress of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. In December 1922, in a letter to the Party Congress, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin wrote, after taking over the position of Secretary General, Comrade Stalin accumulated in his hands immeasurable power, and I am not certain whether he will be always able to use this power with the required care. This letter, a political document of tremendous importance, known in the party's history as Lenin's Testament, was distributed among the delegates to the 20th Party Congress. It was precisely during this period that the practice of mass repression through the government apparatus was born, first against the enemies of Leninism, Trotskyites, Zinovivites, Bukharinites, long since politically defeated by the party, and subsequently also against many honest communists, against those party cadres who have borne the heavy load of the Civil War, and the first and most difficult years of industrialization and collectivization, who actively fought against the Trotskyites and the rightists for the Leninist party line. Stalin organized the concept enemy of the people. This term automatically rendered it unnecessary that the ideological errors of a man or men engaged in a controversy be proven. This term made possible the use of the most cruel repression, violating all norms of revolutionary legality against anyone who in any way disagreed with Stalin, against those who were only suspected of hostile intent, against those who had bad reputations in the main, and in actuality, the only proof of guilt used against all norms of current legal science was the confession of the accused himself, and, as a subsequent probing proved, confessions were acquired through physical pressures against the accused. It was determined that of the 139 members and candidates of the party's Central Committee who were elected at the 17th Congress, 98 persons, that is 70%, were arrested and shot. In the same fate, not only the Central Committee members, but also the majority of the delegates to the 17th Party of Congress. Of 1,966 delegates, with either voting or advisory rights, 1,108 persons were arrested on charges of anti-revolutionary crimes, that is, decidedly more than a majority. This very fact shows how absurd, wild, and contrary to common sense were the charges of counter-revolutionary crimes made, as we now see, against a majority of participants at the 17th Party Congress. After the criminal murder of Sergei M. Kirov, mass repressions and brutal acts of violation of socialist legality began. Now, when the cases of some of these so-called spies and saboteurs were examined, it was found that all their cases were fabricated. Confessions of guilt of many arrested and charged with enemy activity were gained with the help of cruel and inhuman tortures. Comrade Ike was arrested April 29, 1938, on the basis of slanderous materials without the sanction of the prosecutor of the USSR, which was finally received 15 months after the arrest. Ike was forced under torture to sign ahead of time a protocol of his confession prepared by the investigative judges in which he and several other eminent party workers were accused of anti-Soviet activity. On October 1st, 1939, Ike sent his declaration to Stalin in which he categorically denied his guilt and asked for an examination of his case. In the declaration he wrote, "There is no more bitter misery than to sit in the jail of a government for which I have always fought." On February 4th, Ike was shot. It had been definitely established now that Ike's case was fabricated. He had been posthumously rehabilitated. The power accumulated in the hands of one person, Stalin, led to serious consequences during the Great Patriotic War. A cable from our London embassy, dated June 18, 1941, stated, "As of now, Cripps is deeply convinced of the inevitability of armed conflict between Germany and the USSR, which will begin not later than the middle of June." According to Cripps, the Germans have presently concentrated 147 divisions along the Soviet borders. Despite these particularly grave warnings, the necessary steps were not taken to prepare the country properly for defense and to prevent it from being caught unawares. When the fascist armies had actually invaded Soviet territory and military operations began, Moscow issued the order that Stalin, despite evident facts, thought that the war had not yet started, that this was only a provocative action on the part of several undisciplined sections of the German army, and that our reaction might serve as a reason for the Germans to begin the war. Stalin was very much interested in the assessment of Comrade Zhukov as a military leader. He asked me often for my opinion of Zhukov. I told him then, "I have known Zhukov for a long time. He is a good general and a good military leader." After the war, Stalin began to tell all kinds of nonsense about Zhukov, among others the following: "You praise Zhukov, but he does not deserve it. It is said that before each operation at the front, Zhukov used to behave as follows. He used to take a handful of earth, smell it, and say, 'We can begin the attack,' or the opposite. The planned operation cannot be carried out." I stated at that time, "Comrade Stalin, I do not know who invented this, but it is not true." It is possible that Stalin himself invented these things for the purpose of minimizing the role and military talents of Marshal Zhukov. All the more monstrous are the acts whose initiator was Stalin and which are rude violations of the basic Leninist principles of the nationality policy of the Soviet state. We refer to the mass deportations from their native places of whole nations, together with all komsomols without any exception. This deportation action was not dictated by any military considerations. The Ukrainians avoided meeting this fate only because there were too many of them and there was no place to which to deport them. Otherwise, he would have deported them also. Let us also recall the affair of the doctor plotters. Actually, there was no affair outside of the declaration of the woman Dr. Timashuk, who was probably influenced or ordered by someone to write Stalin a letter in which she declared that doctors were applying supposedly improper methods of medical treatment. Such a letter was sufficient for Stalin to reach an immediate conclusion that there are doctor plotters in the Soviet Union. He issued orders to arrest a group of eminent Soviet medical specialists. He personally issued advice on the conduct of the investigation and the method of interrogation of arrested persons. Stalin personally called the investigative judge, gave him instructions, advised him on which investigative methods should be used. These methods were simple: beat, beat, and once again beat. Comrades, the cult of the individual acquired such monstrous size chiefly because Stalin himself, using all conceivable methods, supported the glorification of his own person. This is supported by numerous facts. One of the most characteristic examples of Stalin's self-glorification, of his lack of even elementary modesty, is the edition of his short biography, which was published in 1948. Stalin is the worthy continuer of Lenin's work, or, as it is said in our party, Stalin is the Lenin of today. You see how well it is said? Not by the nation, but by Stalin himself. Comrades, We must abolish the cult of the individual decisively, once and for all. We are absolutely certain that our party, armed with the historical resolutions of the 20th Congress, will lead the Soviet peoples along the Leninist path to new successes, to new victories. Long live the victorious banner of our party, Leninism.